Hey guys, Patrick Freeman here in Chongqing, China. Second video 2 days in a row after no uploads for over a year. What is wrong with me? I must be sick, right? Well, you like my other hat? I like hats. It says Goldman Sachs. When I used to be in the investment industry, I was a wholesaler, and these sub-account wholesalers, vendors would give us free stuff. So this is a free hat from Goldman Sachs. I got pissed off with Goldman Sachs back in 2008 when they did all the stuff that they did, so I marked out the Goldman part and I just put old man. So it's very appropriate for me right now. But yeah, second video. Why am I doing a second video? I'm doing a second video because the video yesterday caused a lot of subscribers and people to reach out to me and say, hey man, your message sounded a little cryptic, like something was going on, wanted to check in with you and see if you're okay. And I just want to reiterate that everything is fine, all is well. What I was restraining myself, what I was trying to keep myself from doing was talking about the things within this culture that really have been bothering me over the past, I would say 2 years or so. And it's kind of a cyclical thing where you'll do well for a month or two, and then all of a sudden somebody will do something that just throws you, that makes you go ballistic and kind of puts you back in that toxicity cycle. So I was trying to keep myself from, being unprofessional and maybe being unfair by portraying them in a bad light. I mean, it's like, would you want somebody to come to your house and video all the things that are going on or talk about all the things that are going on, airing basically your dirty laundry and making a particular family look bad? I mean, nobody wants that. And, this is China's home and I'm still a guest, even though I've been here for quite a while. I struggle with how to share, my real life experiences here in China because I don't want to paint them in a bad light. I don't think it's fair to them. So I think I was just trying to figure out, hey, yeah, something is going on. I've been struggling with cultural adjustment, but I just don't know how to share it yet. And that's what I was fighting with. Do I still like being here? Like I said yesterday, I still like being here. I enjoy it. I mean, I'm working maybe 20 to 25 hours a week, and I'm getting paid probably twice or triple what some people would get paid here. So for an expat, it's a nice life. And I got a great family. I've got a great wife. Cui Cui is doing awesome. Everything is going well. I'm sure she's had her moments with me when, I went toxic on her for something that somebody did or said or stared at me or whatever it might be. Both my sons here in China are doing well. My son, I deeply miss my son in America. I miss you, Grant, and I miss my mom and my family. And so that's kind of compounded it. But I've still liked being here. And being an expat, you can do well. You can make decent money relative to the cost of living. It's super cheap here. I think I uploaded one of my first or second videos was my apartment that we had in Guoguishan, or Capitol Hill, which is on the other side in Chongqing. I mean, I think I was paying like $485 a month for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, nice size kitchen, wooden floors. It kind of looked very westernized, very southern to me. I love the wood floors and I love the wood cabinets that were in there. But you can live well. You can live well, and the food's cheap. The only thing that's not cheap is Starbucks. Starbucks is still the same cost in China as it is somewhere else in the United States. So you can't get out of that one. The foreign food typically genuine foreign food tends to be a little bit more expensive, but you can live a good life here. And I have to remind myself that, of that fact that it is cheap and it is nice. And there's a lot of great places to travel is cheap. Although it's been a little more expensive lately because of coronavirus. It's still a great place to live. So I wouldn't, having beat that dead horse, it's great. I love it here. I don't agree with everything that's going on. I don't necessarily agree with zero COVID. I think there needs to be an even balance. I don't know if it should be like the United States where it's just a free-for-all. Let it fly through the entire population and kill all these people. But then at the same time, you just can't shut down a society every time the virus starts to get bad. And that's what's happening here actually the past couple of days. Um, we've been relatively unaffected here in Chaoyuan, although there have been some cases that have popped up. But I kind of lost my train of thought there. I went off in left field. I kind of do that, guys. I'm sorry. I'll if I don't script it, I just go off in these very scenic routes to explain something. But yes, I enjoy it. The things that I've been struggling with are like safety issues. China's very much like the United States was back in the 20s, the 30s, 40s, and 50s, where there was just this exponential growth, tons of money being poured into infrastructure, and safety wasn't that big a concern until people started getting maimed and died, and companies started getting sued, and politicians were being, pressured to enact some decent safety laws. Well, when you do that, it starts to make things really expensive. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's so cheap here, is because, the laws really haven't been there. There are a lot of safety laws, but it takes a while for the population to kind of start falling in line with what the government says. So safety stuff, seatbelts, you see kids in the back of cars with the windows rolled down. You see, 6-year-olds in the front passenger seat with no seatbelt. Fortunately, most cars here have, the safety mechanism that shuts off the front airbag. So there's going to be hopefully wouldn't be any decapitations, but there would be, major injuries if somebody got into a wreck. I always used to joke with my wife, Toy and tell her that, the laws of physics don't change just because you're sitting in the back seat. Everyone in the back seat should be wearing a seatbelt. And that took a while. It took a while before they started listening. Now they do, and they do wear their seatbelt, which I'm thankful for. Just not too long ago, there was a guy on the 7th floor who was replacing the railing, the patio railing, with some windows. And the construction guys that came to take down the railing cut a piece off, and it fell off the 7th floor. And I could hear, we're on the 2nd floor, I could hear the as it came down, and it landed within 2 or 3 feet of our neighbor, our downstairs neighbor. And had it actually hit her in the head, it probably would have killed her or maimed her. And she went ballistic. I went downstairs. I went ballistic with the little Chinese that I do know. I was yelling at the guy, and I looked up and I noticed on the 7th floor there was no safety netting. There was no safety partition to keep debris from falling down. There was no, the guys that were working, they weren't wearing harnesses. They weren't wearing anything to keep themselves from falling off the 7th floor. And you see that all the time. And, when you come from a society that's been trained to think, to have this spatial awareness, to have this safety awareness around you, and to see a lot of people here, they haven't been trained that way. So it can be frustrating to deal with things like that, and it just grits on your nerves. I can't remember if I said this already, but it's kind of like a marriage. When you get into a marriage, you just love everything about that person, and you overlook all the little things that would probably, and maybe eventually, would bother the crap out of you. And that's the way it was with me here in China. China could do no wrong. They're a great country. They still are a great country, and they do a lot of things right. Like, they're not doing this whole woke thing. I don't get it. And I've talked to a few people here in China that the woke thing is just, they say it's very dangerous and they don't understand it. But, I kind of went off there. But, it's just this, its safety needs to improve. And, when you see people endangering each other's lives, or endangering children's lives by not having them in a child seat or making them wear seatbelts, it's hard not to get emotionally involved in that. The other thing was just the spatial awareness. Chinese people just do not, and I don't want to stereotype all of them, but generally speaking, there's not a level of spatial awareness where they're aware of their surroundings, they're aware of other people. And I'll give you an example. You see, this probably happens 2 or 3 times a week, because I use the subway a lot I like the subway actually, even though I get stared at all the time, and that irritates me. But that's a whole nother story. Um, you'll have people go up an escalator, and then they'll stop at the top, literally at the top where people are getting off to look at their phone or to respond to a message. And you're like, okay, can you find another place to check your phone, and not where people are actually exiting and getting off of this escalator? The other one is on the escalator. I mean, so if you're in an escalator in the United States, most people they get to the right of the escalator if they're not walking up it. So they have the fast lane basically on the escalator, where everybody gets to the right. People that want to walk up, people that are in a hurry, they'll have room to walk up. But here, you'll have people just stop mid elevator. And what makes it even more funny is the culture here is there's such a non-confrontational, you get somebody pissed off enough, they'll rip into you. But generally speaking, they're a non-confrontational society. So you'll have 10 people backed up behind this one person on this really long escalator, and nobody will say anything. They won't say, hey, excuse me, can you move over? And I've learned to do that, where I'll just say, Buha Isa. And I'll get kind of close to the ear so they can hear me, and they'll kind of jump, and then they'll move over. It's probably maybe a week ago, 2 weeks ago, I was going up the escalator, and this guy stopped, and there was 10 people in front of me, and nobody was saying anything to this guy to ask him to move. And so finally I kind of yelled. I said, Zo. I was like, go, go, go. He kind of looked back at me, and then it was almost like he was just going to stand there to piss me off, but then he moved over. And everybody kind of looked at me like with a smile of, thank you, you said something. But they won't, in a lot of cases, they won't do that. You'll see people cut in line, and a lot of times people won't say anything. My wife, on the other hand, she's a tiger. We went to Bana on vacation, and we were going through the health check where we have to show our code and get all these tests and everything. And so I'm standing in line, my wife is behind me, and this lady comes up and literally out of nowhere just looked at me, stepped in front of me. And me being a little passive aggressive, I kind of popped her with my elbow, not hard, just enough to get her attention. I looked at her and I said, Buha Isa, like a sarcastic, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bump into you. And so I just love that woman. Tiger woman comes in there. She grabs her arm. She turns her around, and she's like pointing her finger at her. And I know enough Chinese. I understand more Chinese than I can say, or than I can speak. But I could tell she was ripping her, and she called her a damn hillbilly. That you need to learn how to get in the back of the line. And after Tui dressed her up and down for about 2 minutes, the lady kind of went in the back, the very end of the line. And then, but you look at all the other people, and they're smiling. They're like, finally, somebody spoke up and put this lady in her place. The problem with doing that is, if you're doing that, because it happens sometimes every day, somebody cutting in a line somewhere, you're going to be a miserable person, because there's 1.4 billion people that live here. You got a lot of people to work through to keep them from cutting in line with you. But yeah, it's stuff like that. I know I just kind of did this shotgun effect of things that I've been dealing with, but those are a few of the things that I've dealt with that make it frustrating. And it makes it very frustrating and difficult to deal with sometimes. But you know what I've learned? I'm going to wrap this up because we're at 14 minutes here. What I've learned is sometimes let me back up a little bit. I've always fought kind of internally this culture and wanted to change them and wished that they would change them in the ways that they behave in certain things, things that get on my nerves. And, you just have to realize that number one, you can't change. There's a ton of people here, and there's a ton of perceptions here that would be against what you believe as far as like cultural interactions and that kind of thing. There's just a point where you gotta give up and just not worry about it anymore, because you can't change, perceptions. You can't. What do they say? And I'm not comparing Chinese people to country people, but it's just a saying that you can take somebody out of the country, but you can't take the country out of the people. that's kind of the idea. Again, I'm not referring to them as country people, although a lot of them are country people, and they kind of carry their country behaviors in the city with them. So that's a whole nother topic. But you just got to give up, and you got to love people where they're at. And when I say that, loving people where they're at, I'm not like saying, okay, I've evolved to this much higher level than you are, and I'm going to love you because you don't understand, you aren't educated, you don't think the way that I do. It's not that. It's more of an even level of love where, you know what, people are different. Not everybody's going to behave and act the same way that you are. So you learn to love people where they're at. And I hope that, and my wife is a shining example of loving me where I was at in my most toxic moments, in my most frustrating moments. Honestly, I'm surprised she didn't leave me, because there was times that I was just spewing toxicity everywhere in the house and in my attitude, in the way that I spoke. But I've been a receiver of her grace, and so she's been a good example for me to do the same thing, not only to them but also to the people around me. I'm not where I want to be, but I'm really close to being where I want to be, and I'm happy with that. So I hope this brings some clarity to my video yesterday. I do like it here. I do miss my family, and I'm hoping to visit them soon. All is well, guys. All is well. Video's way too long. The click-through rate on this is going to be horrible. It's going to be like people watch it for 4 minutes and go, I don't want to hear anymore. That's all right. This is kind of like my video journal. And maybe 1,000 years from now, aliens will watch my videos and say, that guy is super weird. I'm glad we didn't come when he was alive.